Sailing, like most sports, demands a certain amount of skill and confidence from its participants before it can be enjoyed to the fullest. With knowledge and understanding of the forces which guide a boat through wind, wave, and sea, the beginning sailor can learn to conquer oceans or simply day sail with the ability to handle the unexpected. It is our hope that this tape produced for the intermediate sailor will help provide the confidence and ability to sail anywhere safely and enjoyably. So join us as some of Southern California's top sailors help you to improve your sailing skills. Our program will cover tacking and jibing, sail trim and draft control, spinnaker handling, safety, and anchoring.
Safe, efficient tacks and jibes require crew coordination and timing. If you follow a few simple rules, soon you'll be tacking and jibing like the pros.
Tacking a powerful, well-tuned boat is an experience which can convert any landlubber to a sailing enthusiast. There is an air of anticipation and mounting excitement of ready about when the crew is preparing for the tack. At hard lee, the fun begins. The boat swings through the eye of the wind. The sound of sails luffing, sheets running, and winches grinding fill the air. The boat begins to accelerate on the new tack as the helmsman and grinder concentrate on keeping the tails flying. Almost as soon as the action began, the rush of activity diminishes and the crew can begin to relax until the next tack. Optimum tacks, which produce minimum loss of boat speed, require precise coordination between helmsman and crew. If the helmsman turns the boat too quickly, excessive drag will slow the boat. Overturning or footing can prevent the sheet from coming in quickly. Likewise, any crew error, such as jamming a winch or block, can turn a fast tack into a very slow one. Let's look at the elements of efficient tacking. At ready about or just before, the sheet trimmer uncleats and prepares to release. The tailer takes several turns around the windward winch and inserts the winch handle. If the wind is moderate or stronger, 3 or more turns are recommended. The bowman prepares to assist the Genoa through the fore triangle. At hard lee, the sheet trimmer eases the sheet and spins it off the winch. The bowman helps the Genoa pass around the baby stay. And the crew winches in the new sheet. Put the jib, secure the sheet, and pull the main to weather to center the boom. And the tack's complete. Let's take another look at tacking from port to starboard this time. At ready about or just before, the sheet trimmer uncleats and prepares to release. The tailer takes several turns around the windward winch and inserts the winch handle. The bowman prepares to assist the Genoa through the fore triangle. At hard lee, the sheet trimmer eases the sheet and spins it off the winch. The bowman helps the Genoa pass around the baby stay, and the crew winches in the new sheet. Put the jib, secure the sheet, and pull the main to weather to center the boom. Jibing a sailboat in a fresh breeze can be a harrowing experience if not done correctly. The boom can swing uncontrollably from side to side and can damage either boat or crew. The key to a safe jibe is to winch the main in before turning the boat to prevent it from slamming from one tack to the other. In a stiff breeze, the main should be winched in tight. In the jibe you are witnessing on your screen, the wind is blowing about 15 knots and the boat is going 6. It's not necessary to pull the main sheet in all the way, but if you're not sure, winch it in tight to be safe. Let's take a closer look at jibing from on board this time. Before winching in the main sheet, move the vang, if located on the rail, to its midship location. Uncleat the sheet and ready the lazy sheet so that the Genoa can be jibed along with the main. Before turning the boat, winch in the main sheet until the main can be jibed safely. When in far enough, the helmsman turns the boat to leeward smartly, and the crew guides the boom from one side to the other. Genoa sheet control in a jibe is different than in a tack. Initially, the sheet is only released slightly or not at all to allow the Genoa to pass around the mast and baby stay. Once the Genoa is on the new tack, the old sheet can be eased completely and the new sheet taken in. When the jibe is complete, don't forget to lead the vang to the rail to act as a preventer.
Up until now, you might have thought the draft control was a new policy down at the bank. Actually, it's a way to shape your sails to match the wind speed and point of sail. Let's begin by looking at the mainsail and the controls used to give the main a good, efficient shape. The draft, or amount of curvature in the mainsail, determines the degree of aerodynamic force the sail develops. For light air, a powerful full shape is called for to keep the boat moving. When the wind picks up, a flatter shape is needed to keep the boat on its feet. Draft or curvature is removed from the upper portion of the sail by bending the mast. The lower portion of the sail is flattened by pulling on the outhaul. Another important factor in controlling mainsail shape is the location of maximum draft. The textbooks tell us that the optimum point of maximum curvature in the mainsail is about 50% back from the leading edge of the sail. The location of maximum draft in the mainsail is adjusted by tensioning the luff. Tensioning the luff moves draft forward. In this view of the main, the luff is too loose. This is evident by the obvious wrinkles in the forward part of the sail and the position of maximum draft, which is well aft of middle. The easiest way to tension the luff is to pull on the Cunningham. If your boat isn't equipped with a Cunningham, you can accomplish the same thing by cranking up the main halyard. As the luff is being tensioned, the point of maximum curvature moves forward and the leading edge wrinkles disappear. The sail looks better and is drawing more efficiently. Another important mainsail control, which determines angle of attack, is the traveler. Exactly where to position this device seems to be a mystery to a great many people. A good general rule for light to moderate winds is to adjust the traveler so that the boom is on the center line of the boat. Normally, centering the boom requires the traveler to be positioned slightly to weather, as you see on your screen. If the wind picks up and the boat angle of heel is greater, the helmsman may notice an increase in weather helm, or the tendency of the boat to head up into the wind. To remove weather helm and balance the boat, ease the traveler downwind a few inches until the helm again feels comfortable. Remember, the best indicator of correct traveler adjustment is the balance of the helm. Main sheet tension controls the set of the leech, or trailing edge of the mainsail. If the main sheet is too loose, the after portion of the sail will be too flat. If it's too tight, the leech will curve to weather excessively. Both extremes will produce an inefficient aerodynamic shape. With the main sheet set much too loose, the leech has very little curvature and is set too far to leeward. Crank in on the main sheet to add curvature to the leech of the sail. A good general rule is to tension the main sheet until the top batten is parallel to the boom. With main sheet tension added, the leech has a fair curve to it, and the sail is aerodynamically correct. Another good indicator of mainsail trim and leech set are the leech telltales. If your main isn't equipped with telltales, add them. If all the telltales are flying, it's a good indication that the traveler position and the main sheet tension are correct. Remember, tension the main sheet until the top batten is parallel to the boom. In this view of our demonstration boat going to weather, the wind is blowing about 10 to 12 knots. As wind speed increases above this range, it's important to know how to flatten the main to reduce heeling forces and keep the boat on its feet. As we mentioned earlier, draft or curvature is removed from the lower portion of the mainsail by cranking out the outhaul. With reduced draft, aerodynamic side forces will be reduced and the boat will sail flatter. The necessity to reef may be avoided or delayed. Draft may be reduced from the upper portion of the sail by bending the mast. This is accomplished by tensioning the baby stay. If your boat doesn't have one, don't worry about it too much. Chances are your sailmaker allowed for this when he constructed your mainsail. As the wind increases to 15 knots or more, and the angle of heel is beyond what is comfortable, the best way to keep the boat on its feet is to reef the main. This is easily done if your boat is equipped with Jiffy reefing. Let's begin by looking at a Jiffy reefing setup, and then review the steps involved in tying in a reef. The hardware consists of a reefing line which is run up through a clew kringle, around a block near the end of the boom, and up to a winch, and a hook or puller to secure the tack when the sail is lowered. When the time comes to reef, start out by making sure the topping lift is attached. This is to prevent the boom from falling when the main halyard is released. Next, ease the main sheet to get the wind out of the sail so that it can be lowered. The next step requires 2 crew members to accomplish efficiently. The crew member on your left is releasing the main halyard to a predetermined point and pulling down on the luff to establish the new tack. The crew member on your right is winching in the reefing line to secure the new clew. When the sail has been lowered sufficiently, secure the halyard and reef line. The new tack is secured, in this case using the Cunningham, and tensioned to remove the wrinkles from the luff. Roll up the foot and tie in the reef points using a reef knot. Don't make the ties too tight, as this may produce stress points along the foot of the sail. The last step is to crank in on the main sheet to get the wind back in the sail. With the mainsail reefed, total sail area and sail area aloft are reduced, resulting in considerably less heeling force. On a masthead boat with a large 4-triangle, such as our demonstration boat, the Genoa provides most of the forward driving power, especially when sailing close-hauled. Like the mainsail, the Genoa can be shaped and flattened to match the wind speed and conditions. The optimum location of the point of maximum draft in the Genoa is about 40% back from the leading edge of the sail. This differs from the optimum location in the mainsail, which is about 50% back. Draft location is controlled by tensioning the luff. Cranking it on the Genoa halyard moves the draft forward, letting it out moves the draft aft. A common mistake made, especially by a young enthusiastic crew member, is to over-tension the Genoa halyard when the sail is being raised. A strong sailor, aided by the mechanical advantage of a powerful winch, can permanently distort the luff of an expensive sail. A good rule to follow when raising any sail is to tighten the halyard to the point where the luff wrinkles just disappear. In this view of the Genoa luff, the pronounced horizontal wrinkles indicate the halyard is too loose. Crank it up to get the wrinkles out and move the draft to the right place. Probably the most important control in determining correct Genoa shape is the sheet lead position. If the sheet lead is too far forward, the leech will be tight and the bottom of the sail will be excessively full. If the sheet is too far aft, the top portion of the sail will have excessive twist. It's a lot easier to determine correct Genoa sheet lead position if you have a method to adjust it while under sail. The crew is demonstrating one approach. Set a spare block in the new position and run the lazy sheet through it to an extra winch. Tension the lazy sheet and ease the sheet to establish the new lead position. The best way to tell if the sheet is in the right position is by examining the telltales along the luff. If the telltales break evenly from top to bottom when the boat is headed up, the lead position is correct. If the upper telltales break prematurely, move the lead forward. If the lower telltales break first, move it aft. As the wind picks up in speed, a flatter headsail is needed to reduce heeling force. Flatten the Genoa by tensioning the backstay to reduce headstay sag. Never exceed the recommended pressure limit. In this view, the backstay has been completely eased and the forestay has a considerable amount of sag. As the backstay is tensioned, forestay sag is reduced considerably and the sail has less draft. If your boat doesn't have a backstay tensioner, it's best to keep the backstay adjusted tight for the higher wind conditions and accept the inefficiency which will exist at lower wind speeds. When going from a beat to a reach, there are a number of adjustments which should be made to keep the sails drawing at peak efficiency. In addition to easing the Genoa sheet and the mainsail traveler to get the telltales flying again, the main Cunningham and the outhaul should be eased to get the draft in the right place and make the sail fuller for the reaching position. Likewise, the Genoa halyard should be eased and the backstay let out to relocate the point of maximum draft to the correct position and add fullness to the sail. When going from a reach to a broad reach, everything is eased out even further. The best indication that the sails are trimmed properly on this point of sail are still the main and Genoa telltales, so play with the sails to get them flying. Off the wind, the boom bang becomes an important control to limit mainsail twist and keep the upper part of the main drawing efficiently. Tension the bang to get the leech telltales flying evenly. To sail further off the wind than a broad reach, you'll probably want to put up a spinnaker, which happens to be the subject of our next sequence.
Are you mystified and maybe even a little intimidated by this sail called a spinnaker? Watch closely and it'll all be crystal clear.
As you can see, flying a spinnaker is exciting, colorful, and fun. From the time the sail fills and catches the wind to the takedown, the boat is alive with activity. Jump the halyard, square the pole, trim the sheet. All at once, everyone is very busy. You'll wish you had a few more people on the boat. This is sailing at its best. And of course, it's easy to get carried away. We've almost forgotten this is an instructional video. Let's back up and look at how to rig a spinnaker. With the boat rigged for a set on the port tack, we'll start by tracing the after guy. The after guy, which controls the angle of the pole to the wind, is led aft from a snatch block on the windward rail to the port spinnaker winch. The after guy is led forward through the pole end and is attached to the port clew, which is left protruding from the bag. The spinnaker sheet is led aft over the lifelines, through a block at the stern rail and up to the starboard spinnaker winch. The spinnaker turtle is clipped to the forestay with the halyard, after guy, and sheet attached. The pole is supported from above by the topping lift and from below by the foreguy. Once everything is rigged, you'll probably want to raise as soon as possible. Let's look at the correct procedure to get the spinnaker up and flying right. To help make the set trouble-free, the crew is presetting the pole by tensioning and cleating the after guy. When everyone is ready, the bowman walks forward and takes the cover off the turtle. Returning to the mast, the bowman prepares to jump the halyard while the crew tails. Make sure you've taken a turn around the winch. You've just seen a pretty good set. The spinnaker fills nicely and the boat begins to accelerate. The crew uses the winch to raise the last 8 feet of halyard. Immediately after the set, pole height and angle to the wind are important to keep the sail drawing efficiently. Let's take a look at the elements of correct pole trim. There are 3 basic rules for pole trim. Rule number 1, and the most important, is to square the pole to the apparent wind. With the pole too far forward, as you see here, the leading edge of the sail is at too great an angle to the wind, and the luff will stall prematurely. Aerodynamic lift will not develop with the pole trimmed this way. With the pole squared to the apparent wind, the angle of attack is correct. Aerodynamic lift develops near the luff, and stall occurs much further back on the sail. The boat goes faster, and it's easier to keep the spinnaker filled. To minimize loads on the pole, topping lift and foreguy, adjust the pole square to the mast. This is rule number 2. The height of the pole controls the amount of twist in the luff of the spinnaker. A good general rule is to adjust pole height so that the tack and clew are flying at the same height above the water. This is rule number 3. Immediately following the raise, the pole is a few feet low and the clew is flying above the tack. With the pole adjusted up a few feet, the tack and clew are flying evenly. The luff has more twist and the sail has a good, fast shape. Another important factor in controlling spinnaker luff angle of attack and the ability of the sail to develop lift is correct sheet trim. The general rule for doing this is to let the sheet out until the luff begins to break, and then to sheet in a few feet. By alternately letting out and sheeting in, the luff is maintained at the proper angle of attack. An effective way to trim the sheet is to have the winch tailer stand or sit on the weather rail where he or she can see the luff break. The tailor calls instructions to the grinder, who provides the mechanical advantage to crank the sheet in. In light air, the tailor may be able to sheet in without the grinder, but if the wind is moderate or stronger, the grinder is a necessity. When the luff begins to break, crank the sheet in a few feet until the luff stabilizes. This method works well, keeps the crew from getting bored, and of course, you'll get to the mark or the next port as soon as possible. If you don't want to work quite this hard, or if you have a lazy crew, it's possible to keep the spinnaker luff at the correct angle of attack with careful helmsmanship. If the luff is breaking too much, steer downwind a few degrees. If it looks too steady, head up a bit. This method is equally effective, but requires more concentration and work from the helmsman. Spinnaker takedowns can either be a thing of beauty or a disaster. The first rule of spinnaker takedowns is to do it before the wind gets too strong. The next step is to flake the halyard neatly, as the crew is doing here, so that it will run out freely when the time comes. The next step is to position one or more crew on the leeward side where they can grasp the sheet and then gather in the chute. When everyone is ready, the takedown can proceed. The key to a good spinnaker takedown is to get the wind out of it as soon as possible. This is done by quickly easing the afterguy until the pole is almost to the forestay, and then dropping the halyard rapidly a length equal to about half the height of the mast. On this boat, that's about 20 feet. After the initial drop, the halyard is released more slowly as the chute is gathered in to prevent it from going in the water. Once the chute is gathered, secure the halyard, afterguy, and sheet. Stuff it down the hatch, and you're done.
On board, we take safety very seriously. We hope you do too. Join us while we look at some important safety gear. We'll also demonstrate a man overboard drill.
One of the most important safety items on any boat is the PFD, or Personal Flotation Device. The Coast Guard requires there be one on board for each person on the boat. The crew is putting on one of the newer designs, which looks considerably less conspicuous than the traditional orange version. Children should wear a PFD at all times while on board, and adults should put one on when the going gets rough. In the event that your vessel becomes disabled and you want to signal distress to a rescue team, you'll need a visual distress signaling device on board. The flare pistol and flares you see here meet the Coast Guard requirements for both day and night use. Be sure to replace the flares on a regular basis. Another important safety item is the fire extinguisher. Two of the type you see here are required by the Coast Guard for the 34-foot boat we're using in the demonstration. Make sure the extinguishers on your boat are charged and ready to go. The next group of items are not required by the Coast Guard, but most prudent boaters wouldn't consider leaving port without them. The VHF radio is at the top of the list in this category. If you have a problem with your boat, or if a crew member becomes ill, you can call for assistance with a VHF. Check the VHF on your boat by calling for a radio check on a regular basis. That way you'll know if it's working when you really need it. Another safety necessity, which we hope you'll never have to use, is the first aid kit. The one you see here is Coast Guard approved and contains everything needed to render temporary medical aid. If you're planning an extended cruise, however, a larger, more comprehensive kit is recommended. If you're topsides, and especially on the foredeck, in rough weather or at night, It's a good idea to wear a safety harness. Clip it onto something sturdy so that no matter what happens, you'll stay with the boat. The crew is also wearing a personal strobe, which emits a powerful flash that can be seen for a considerable distance after the sun goes down. Without the strobe, a night overboard recovery would have little chance of success, especially in rough seas. In the unlikely event that someone should go in the water, it's important to have the equipment to get them back on board safely. This is a flotation device called a horseshoe, with an attached man-overboard pole. The horseshoe will keep the person in the water afloat, and the pole will mark his position. If the overboard victim is in good shape, he can most likely swim to the boat and climb up the boarding ladder. If he's tired or incapacitated, however, it may be necessary to use a retrieval system such as the one you see here. It comes with the instructions right on the cover and an optional block and tackle set. With this gear, you can pull a tired victim to the boat and haul him aboard. We recently conducted a poll at our yacht club. Only 5 out of 10 boat owners had ever practiced an overboard drill. The message here is to practice ahead of time so that if someone should go in the water, you'll be prepared to get him out. The first step in an overboard recovery is to shout, "Man overboard," to alert everyone on the boat, and throw the horseshoe and pole as quickly as possible. It's also very important to maintain visual contact with the victim. If possible, one crew member should do nothing else but keep an eye on the person in the water. While the crew is preparing to get the Genoa down, our victim is swimming to the horseshoe. The highly visible attached overboard pole not only marks position for the recovery boat, but also provides a visual warning to any boat traffic in the area. If your boat has an engine, by all means start it. It will add to the maneuverability and control of the boat. If your boat is engineless, it's probably a good idea to keep the jib up until you're closer to the victim. The next step in a proper overboard rescue is to go around and approach the victim from a downwind position. Another thing to realize about any overboard rescue is that no two will ever be alike. That's why it's important to be ready for anything. In a Transpac race a number of years ago, a very well-known sailor was at the helm of a Class A racing sloop. The boat was flying a spinnaker in winds of up to 30 knots. The seas were running about 10 feet, and it was an extremely dark, moonless night when one of the crew went overboard. The helmsman made a snap decision. He immediately jibed the boat with the spinnaker still flying. He quickly reasoned that had they waited to take down the chute in the traditional manner, they never would have located the victim on that dark, rough night. The maneuver worked. The chute, backwinded harmlessly against the mast, was taken down and the victim recovered. While the recovery you're witnessing is not as dramatic as the one just told, it is nevertheless equally important to the person in the water. Our victim appears to be in good shape, so the crew is preparing a boarding ladder. Had she been in the water longer or injured, the crew might have elected to use the rescue sling demonstrated earlier. With the crew members safely aboard, let's review the important steps in an overboard rescue. 1. The person who first sees the man go in the water shouts "Man overboard" to alert everyone. 2. He then throws the horseshoe buoy and pole overboard. 3. Always keep an eye on the person in the water. If possible, one crew member should do nothing else but watch the victim. 4. Reverse course as quickly as possible and approach the victim from a downwind position. 5. If your boat has an engine, start it. Also, drop the headsail to improve maneuverability. 6. Approach the victim cautiously and assist him aboard. If the victim is weak, use the life sling.
Anchoring seems easy, but it's actually more complicated than you may think. Pay close attention and you'll sleep a lot better the next time you go to the islands.
Before venturing out of the slip for the first time, your boat should be equipped with the proper anchoring gear. The weight of the anchor, type and size and length of chain and rode are all important in determining holding power. This boat is equipped with a 22-pound Danforth type anchor and 30 feet of 5/16" chain, which is somewhat conservative for a 34-foot boat. The line is fitted with colored markers to take the guesswork out of figuring out how much rode has been released. This is a chart which lists recommended anchor weight, shackle, rope, and chain size for various boat lengths. The strongest anchor available can be rendered useless if it is paired with line or chain that is too weak. Note that a 22-pound Danforth is recommended for boats of approximately 38 feet, making our demonstration boat anchor somewhat oversized, which is certainly desirable. Never equip your boat with an undersized main anchor unless you like to live dangerously. Before dropping the anchor, it's a good idea to carefully consider the boats around you. The rule here is to anchor the same way as everyone else. Never put down two anchors in an anchorage where everyone is on one hook. When the wind changes, the other boats will swing into you. Likewise, if you've got one hook down and all the other boats have two, you'll swing into them when the wind changes. Of course, if you're off by yourself or if you're the first boat to the anchorage, you can be selective. Once you've chosen an anchoring strategy and picked a likely spot, head the boat into the wind, come to a complete stop, and lower, don't throw, the anchor over the side. As soon as the anchor is on the bottom, back the boat directly downwind. Let out enough scope to allow the anchor to dig in. The recommended amount is 7 or 8 times the depth of the water. Since it's about 20 feet deep where we're anchoring, that's about 150 feet of line. In severe conditions, the scope should be 10 times the depth of the water or greater. When the proper amount of anchor rode has been released, secure the line to the bow cleat by using a figure-8 turn or two with a locking half hitch. If the anchor has set properly, the line should get taut at this point and the boat should stop abruptly. It's always a good idea to secure the free end of the line to a second cleat just for insurance. At this point, you need to make a decision as to whether or not you want to set a stern anchor. If the answer is yes, get it ready. On our demonstration boat, the stern anchor is stowed below in a basket. There are two ways to set a stern anchor: by rowing it out in a dinghy or from on board. If you do it from on board, you'll need to let out even more line from the bow, at least 5 times the water depth, or about 100 feet for a 20-foot depth. By this time, the bow anchor line may be approaching the bitter end. That's why it's a good idea to have a float secured to it just in case. When the bow line is out far enough, lower away on the stern anchor. When it's on the bottom, start hauling in on the bow line while letting out the stern line. When there's enough line out, secure it to the cleat and the boat's anchored. Once anchored, let's look at a few tricks to make sure you stay that way. Start by taking a bearing on a nearby point of land or buoy. If the bearing doesn't change after 5 or 10 minutes, it's a good bet the boat's there to stay. If it does change, you better think about resetting. Here's another device that will help you to sleep at night. The depth sounder on this boat is equipped with an alarm. If the anchor drags and the measured depth becomes less than the alarm depth, it starts beeping. If the weather is really bad or if you're unsure of the holding ground, set an anchor watch. If there are 4 people on board and each person takes a 2-hour watch, everyone can have 6 hours of undisturbed sleep. Without an anchor watch, it's a pretty good bet that at least the owner won't sleep. He'll be worried about the boat all the time. Weighing anchor can be somewhat more difficult than setting anchor, since gravity and the ability of the anchor to dig in is working against the task, especially on a boat without a windlass, like this one. Start by releasing enough line on the bow anchor until the boat is directly over the stern anchor. If the crew member assigned the task is strong enough, the anchor will come out easily. If not, 2 people or a winch might be needed. Be sure to shake the mud off the hook before bringing it aboard. As soon as the stern anchor is up, the bow anchor can be hauled in. Starting the engine and putting it in forward will greatly assist the crew pulling in the line. It is also helpful to have an assistant to guide the line or chain into the locker so it won't foul the next time it's released. If the anchor doesn't want to break free, one method to get it out is to lead the line to a winch and crank it up. This only works until chain starts coming aboard, of course. Another method is to tie the line off at the bow and run over the anchor in the same direction it was set. The boat can pull on the line a lot harder than the crew. We've broken out many an anchor this way. Once it's free, haul it aboard and set sail for the next anchorage.
Improve Your Sailing Skills featured Carl Treiberg, Deborah Furlan, Larry Listing, Sherry Lee, Dave Kieselbach, and Beth Listing.